Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fourth installment of the Communal Table Talks, Experimental Experiential. I'm here with my co-hosts, Leslie Brenner and Bradford Thompson. And today we have the great pleasure of having our first international guest from Sweden, from Stockholm, Benjamin Calleja, CEO of Livit Design. Before I'm gonna go more in depth, I'm gonna introduce Benjamin. As always, a few kind of housekeeping. If you guys have questions, please on my screen it's like on this side. There's chat. Please write question as we go along. The format is always the same. It's half an hour. We keep it short and sweet. Benjamin is gonna introduce what he's doing, and then we will have Q&A. So please, again, join the conversation. That's kind of the reason why we do this. So I met Benjamin a little bit more than a year ago at a conference, an experiential conference in LA, and we were kind of talking before how we met just right before COVID hit. We met in a different world. And my experience at the time, Benjamin told me about a restaurant that he just opened in downtown LA called V. And the thing that was fascinating to me is that he was talking about the restaurant as a lab, as an experiment. And so I went to kind of check it out, and I have great food, beautiful drinks. The environment was really kind of stunning. And then as I was leaving, I spoke with him about what I just experienced, and he gave me sort of like a X-ray view of all the invisible technology that really kind of enhance the experience in ways that really were like so innovating, that kind of blew my mind. So I think that this is what we're going to talk about. Technology, hospitality, and how restaurants have really changed in the last year. Benjamin, take it away, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting me, and hi everyone from the other side of the pond. So far, we're not allowed to fly back to the US, so I'll have to connect with you guys from this side. But ultimately, my purpose here is to share. I hope I can share some insights. I'm going to start and tell you a little bit about this concept specifically, which is our own restaurant labs, and what are the things we try and what works and what doesn't work. And hopefully the audience can bring some of these things and insights back to your operations or to your new brands. And as you were saying, please feel free to send questions, and we'll have some space for Q&A at the end. Or, I'll share my contact details, and I'll be happy to answer any questions offline. So with that, I'm going to try to... it says that I can't share my screens because it's
you should be able to.
All right, let me try this now again and see if this works. All right. So let me know if you see my screen. See if we can make the technology work.
Perfect.
Does it work? Yeah.
Yes.
So very briefly, I'm the founder of Livit, which is currently the world's largest restaurant design company. We're in almost 50 countries. So we do approximately 1,000 restaurants per year. So that gives us a lot of access to trends, to knowledge, to innovation all over the world. We have currently done somewhere between 13,000 and 14,000 restaurants. So a lot of gray hair and hopefully some learnings that I'll be able to share with you guys and the audience. So what I think it's interesting is that it's not just a design firm. What we really look into, we work primarily with brands and investors in brands in understanding what is the future of this industry. How is this industry pivoting? How is it changing? The pandemic has been fascinating to see a lot of disruption, but it always goes through, back of the house, operational efficiency, technology, kind of creating the platform. And then, yes, of course, we design the car, but ultimately the engine and the platform is what's really relevant. So I'm going to share today about what we call the Livit Labs. And this was an idea that we started 4 years ago, where we said we had the impression we work with very large brands, global brands, and we had this impression that the industry was not innovative enough. So we actually decided to open up our own restaurants that we packed with all sorts of sensors for us to do things differently and try new things. So this is an image of our first unit, which was in Stockholm called 1889. It was an immediate success. It's become viral. I've been asked to speak at a number of conferences around the world about it, and it was really for guests that walk in, they don't know that is a lab. They don't know that they've been monitored of all sorts. But it's a really good trial to have your own environment when you can do what we call the what if, right? And the whole idea was, could we take the QSR operational efficiency and affordable prices and fast service and all these things that are, convenient and then that have been so important during the pandemic in the survival of many brands, but could we put it in a fine dining ambience, elevated food, cool cocktails? So this is really what's new. We were talking just because before we were coming live in, yes, there are, the QSRs and the fast casual that really focus on operational excellence and operational efficiency. And then you have the fine dining. Could there be a match, instead of being opposites? So this was our what if. And here's an image of the LA location that you mentioned. We won the best restaurant design of the year for it. So you feel you're in a fine dining environment. The food feels fine dining. It's elevated. The DJs, the music, the whole experience is really high end, but it operates without chefs, without mixologists, without bartenders, at an extreme operational efficiency with very tight back of the house. It only has a 600 square feet back of the house. So this was really the type of experiment that we're doing. And I wanted to intersect just a slide on a positive note. I know that a lot of people in the audience might be thinking of reopening the restaurants or in the process or just reopen the restaurants. I got this slide the other day about why consumers are interested in leaving home post-pandemic, and right after seeing friends and family more often, it was going out to eat in restaurants. So I think we have a great opportunity to rethink how we operate restaurants, and I think this is what we're using our labs. We just talked about how we're constantly pushing the boundaries. So basically what we did, and I won't talk too much about it, is we created a very simple menu, but in a high-end presentation with an affordable price point, somewhere between $7 and $16, right, for the dishes. So it's an affordable, it's almost like a fast casual pricing, but you do get it in a high-end presentation in a high-end environment. So the perception is fine dining, but the engine is almost like QSR. So we hire no chefs. We actually only hire people that have no industry experience. So we try to recruit students. In our Swedish lab, our average age is 19 years old. So mostly fresh out of grad or students that want to make some extra money. And then we train them in presentation. So we have no mixologists. This is a couple of slides of our drinks. The one to the right is our bestseller in Los Angeles called the Smoking Pot, which is very relevant for downtown LA. So they really look high end, and the one to the left changes color. So it's all about creating an experience and a perception of value for money, but running it completely differently. So we always say that efficiency is the new black. And we got a question the other day, and we were talking about it before. Why do we open restaurants in high labor markets? So all our restaurant labs, we now have 3 up and running, and I'm at a construction site today looking at a 4th site. We open them only in places that have $25 upwards cost of labor. So really in the hardest environments to do business, because that's really what we want to try. And we focus on cross-training, and we use mostly one single metric, which is guest per labor hour. So basically we take all the labor hours, including cleaning. So pre-opening, prep, closing the restaurants, all the hours in a restaurant, and we devise the guests that we get through the day. And we're constantly, globally, doesn't matter if in the US or in Europe, over 5 guests per labor hour, which is in, QSR metric compared to maybe 2 guests per labor hour that you can get in a casual dining environment. So this is some of the metrics that we constantly follow up in these labs. Another is that we can do a transaction every 30 seconds. So it's almost like a McDonald's. And the average ticket time from the time you have ordered to the moment you have your drink and your food on your table is 5 minutes. So we really, there's no pressure to leave the restaurant. What we're doing is a seamless experience. So the wait is shorter. And once you have finished your food, you can just leave. So kind of rethinking the restaurant experience. And you asked me specifically to talk about technology because tech is a lot of the underlying trick behind this. So we measure everything in the restaurants. We have every kind of sensors that you could imagine, from heat mapping to geofencing to how guests move inside the restaurant, scent intensities, sound experiences, everything that you could measure, we measure. But then we track also. So these are real stats from how we know every 15 minutes how many guests we have in real time in the restaurant, if they've been with us before, what is their dwell time, how this is correlated to temperature, to rain, to events. And we use this to create predictive analysis. So we actually can know how the staffing should be, how much inventory you should have. And there's a lot of very interesting learnings from this type of technology. We're using AI to do this. And we got sometimes the question of why AI. And here, this is the actual map. So on the left is everything we measure. And then on the right, on the top right, you have the guest-facing experiences. And on the bottom right, you have the operational items that we can improve through these metrics. So it's really complex. But every time, the more data you have, the more restaurants and labs we open, the more learnings we get. And just before we go into conversation, a quick nuggets. One is we played a lot with scent strategy, what scent can do to customer experience and to guest behavior. So we use artificial scent ejected into the air conditioning. And when we change from wood fire oven to fresh basil, our salad sales go up 13%. So now, depending on the day of the week and on the day part, we use different scents to create different consumption patterns at guests. The other thing is an experiment we did with the first impression. So this is a picture of our to-go pizza box. And we wanted to create an experiment that we call the pizza box for the boardroom. How is a pizza box if it's to present it in a boardroom? And we did exactly the same food. We put it in a regular cardboard pizza box and in our pizza box. And we did focus groups and asked guests how much they would be willing to pay for the product. And the average was 27% more for exactly the same product, just through presentation. What we did not expect is that 80% of guests that orders online actually post it on their social media. So in the beginning, everyone told us that we were completely crazy by having a $1 pizza box. But if you think of it, having a $1 per user-generated content on social media is extremely cheap marketing. So we're taking our packaging from our marketing budget, not from our OPEX. If anyone has your phones on you, you can actually scan this QR code, and you would actually see that on the backside of our boxes, we have this. So you can actually connect and listen to the music that is playing in the restaurant while you're enjoying your dinner at home. And these are the things that we're trying to bring, the restaurant experience to the off-premise as well, which is really interesting. And this is just one of the examples that we're doing. Music is extremely important. We did an experiment with McDonald's here, where we actually played with what type of music. And interestingly enough, depending on if the music is fit for the brand or not, we could change the sales by items in up to 9.1%. So it's very interesting to understand that with what type of scent, what type of music, what type of lighting you have in real time in the restaurant, you can actually change consumer behavior, consumer patterns, and average guest checks. So there's a lot of insights and learnings. We've been doing this for for 20 years, and I can talk for 4 hours, but I really want to make sure that we get some time for discussion and Q&A. So what we're actually doing now is a dynamic volume control. So we in real time can know how many guests we have, what is the throughput in the restaurant. Do we want them to have a higher average guest check, or do we want higher throughput in the restaurant and guests? And this is now automatically controlled by algorithms. And this is kind of the future where we see technology behind the scenes, to your point, can assist restaurant operators in kind of excelling, as we're now starting to think, what is the next chapter in our industry. So with that, I'll stop and close my video, and happy to answer questions or have an open conversation about it.
Well, Benjamin, definitely one of the first thing that I want to ask you about. It's like you talk a little bit about how sound influences the guest experience, and I always think that's an aspect, in restaurants, but in the retail and a lot of other kind of public environments, that it's always left behind, not really kind of thought through. I mean, I remember you kind of talking about some experiment with the Spotify about what kind of music, what music. Can you talk about that a little bit, because again, it's so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, our first restaurant lab was at the ground floor of the Spotify building. So they actually accepted to use us as their lab as well. So we use Soundtrack Your Brand, which is the business version of it. And the whole idea is we wanted to understand what music does. Everyone knows that music is important for a guest experience in a restaurant. We all know that in a restaurant, in a hotel, in our homes. But what does it actually do to consumer behavior? So what we do is that, for example, we now know that when we play the same playlist 10 decibels higher in volume, we increase the sales of non-healthy food by 8%. When we play familiar music, kind of the A side of the single, right, or the hit of that artist, the throughput and the turnover of guests in the restaurant is increased. So when we hear songs that we're familiar with, we get more aware of time, because we will get distracted from the conversation we're having with our counterpart at the table. So understanding what is the objective. As I said before, do I want a higher average guest check? Do I want my guests to stay? Then you have one type of music, one type of sound, one type of lighting. If I want throughput, then I have a different energy level, a different volume, and a different type of music. And having the ability to connect that in real time with the restaurant performance, and have all these things that, to be honest, are pain for managers, right? Thinking of the sound, thinking of the volume, thinking of what type of light I have, the scenes, all that, and allowing our team members to really focus on hospitality and treat the guests, and that all these things are taken care of by technology. I think it's fascinating, and probably will be the future of our industry.
Yeah, Benjamin, I got to say, first of all, thank you, because it's just, the presentation really was very interesting to me already, but to hear you talk about it, it is fascinating. And, my initial reaction when I read it is, having been in hospitality for a long time, is are you taking the hospitality away? Are you taking the creativity away? But as I heard you speak about it again, I really, I believe that I remember aging myself. The volume control always had a piece of tape that the manager would put and say, don't touch the volume, 4 p.m. level, 10 p.m. level. And, a server would inevitably touch it. So by taking that stuff away, like you said, you are able to provide more focus on hospitality. But what are the challenges of hiring non-restaurant people? And I know the benefit is there's bad habits, and this is how I've always done it, and things like that. But what challenges do you find trying to instill hospitality in people that don't have experience?
So actually, I think it's an advantage rather than a challenge, because when you recruit without experience, you can just recruit for attitude. And I think that's a lot about hospitality. Hospitality is about, this is a people's business. It's a people's industry, right? And it's hard to find somebody that is really good with people, but at the same time, it's a good mixologist, or at the same time, is a good chef, or at the same time. So by de-skilling the operational, you can really just focus on, people that are good with people, right? And so I would say that the challenge we had is the other way around, right? As you mentioned, when suddenly in the team there's a manager that this is how we do it, or when we talk about hierarchy, specifically in the US, the restaurant industry is very hierarchical, right? You're a buzzer or a dishwasher, then you become a runner, then a server, etc., and your manager, and you don't go back. And suddenly in our restaurants where, we ask the manager to do the dishes, and everyone does everything, because that's how you get the operational efficiency by cross-training. It is such a change for the industry that I understand. And often we actually have to fly people into our own labs in Europe so they can actually see it. And when they see it, they believe it. But it's really hard, as Bradford, as you say, for a restaurant veteran to kind of understand how this is without seeing it.
Well, I guess the follow-up then is, if you could speak to the management level, what do you look for, and how do you hire management, and what is their role then if technology and AI is sort of using the algorithms to predictively order and set music and lighting? What role does that manager play? Is there mentorship, or is it just part of the team?
So the manager's role is to be a leader and create culture and focus on that, which is extremely important. Creating the right culture in the restaurant, having the right leadership, and growing teams. It's a huge task. If you then have to, on top of that, add inventory and add music and add all these other things that are actually quite boring, you take away focus from what really matters, which is, once again, people, your own people.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Benjamin. That was such an amazing presentation, and I had seen, I think, most of the slides, but hearing you explain it really just brings so much to it. So thank you. But I'm curious about how do you, I'm fascinated with the fact that the staff is all no experience. How do you market to potential employees?
So it was very interesting when we first opened our first lab. We're a design company. We're not a restaurant operator company, right? So it was really hard to attract talent, right? Everyone knew, if you're a famous brand, people know what to expect, and you get CVs. What we did is we did a video, and it's somewhere on YouTube for 1889, where we created a video by a dancer. We hired a ballet dancer that actually performed in a restaurant, and the whole tagline was, it's a place where you can be yourself and express yourself. So, for example, rather than having uniforms, we have a dress code, because not everyone feels comfortable in the same uniform, right? Not everyone looks great in a bow tie. So what we try to create is an environment where you can express yourself, where you can be yourself. And that really promotes that people treatment, right? If you're great with people but become scripted in this restaurant, this is how we talk to our guests, this is how we welcome them, this is how we say goodbye, then you become a robot. And that's not what we want. And it's part of our recruitment strategy. There's not many places where you can really be yourself, and you're actually encouraged to be yourself. And that's part of how we recruit. We recruit for that type of attitude, for that type of talent. And when you get it, it's beautiful, because it really works.
Well, that seems really important at this particular labor moment as well, when there's been so much, there's been so much in the press and so much going on in our industry about the humanity and lack of humanity in terms of restaurant staff and, both front of the house and back of the house. So it's very interesting, because it plays very starkly against the sort of high-tech, features that are driving the restaurant. It's sort of, getting to actually what Bradford was getting at as well. It sort of actually allows that sort of sense of humanity in a way that's very unexpected.
And I think
Benjamin,
for us, it's been even more important because in Sweden, there's no unemployment. If you want to work, there's plenty of work. So you really have to attract talent. You have to attract, and most of our team members they might be studying engineering. I mean, it's not, we have an average of $28 an hour. So this is not your entry level, I don't have the language team member. These are team members that could choose where to work and that have great attitude and, that energy level that we're looking for. So you have to have a different culture to be able to attract this type of talent.
Benjamin, I'm curious, and I'm sure you've studied this, the cost of the technology to build out a restaurant like this, when you start talking about the analytics and the sensors and the equipment required to build this restaurant versus a traditional restaurant, we'll call it. I'm sure that the reduction in labor makes this financial model work. I'm just curious, how much more does it, percentage-wise, would you say it costs to build this restaurant? And the second question is, with the smaller footprint in the kitchen that you were speaking about, with these recipes, when they come in, are we talking about like items coming from commissary that are finished here, or is this full scratch cooking in a smaller space with a smaller menu, and how those two things work together?
Yeah, so the first question I got a lot. So we have actually done the numbers in detail, and hardware is inexpensive. The hardware is $5,000. So basically, you need to have Wi-Fi in your restaurant. You put a few more antennas in. Bluetooth beacons are extremely cheap. So the hardware is not expensive. What is expensive is software and integration, right? And running those integrations. So for a one-off restaurant, it becomes expensive. If you're a multi-unit operation, it becomes extremely interesting to look into that. And to answer your second question, we do everything in the restaurants. We don't have a scale. We have 4 restaurants in 4 corners of the world. So we can't have commissaries so we do everything from scratch in the restaurants, but everything is incredibly simple. And I don't know, for example, all the sizes are photographed together with a knife. So you don't even need to know how many centimeters or how many inches. You put a knife and then you know how big the pieces should be. So try to do everything to someone that has never stepped a foot in a restaurant.
Right.
But we always want them to train digitally, which is a very important thing that I didn't mention. All our training is digital. It's on the cell phone and it's gamified. So the more credits you do, the more you learn, the more money you make. So we're actually promoting cross-training and teams to work together. And we actually do competition between restaurants. So what restaurants have more skills, more points, more cross-training, they can get extra rewards. So that whole thing for that type of age group that we're having as team members is extremely important.
I can imagine. That's really interesting. Well, we probably have time for one question. I didn't see any pop up.
I'd like one more, Benjamin. We're talking, before we went live about how the labs that you're opening. Yeah, you mentioned the first one, in Sweden, the LA, and a few others coming. Can you talk about the difference between these related to the size of their market?
Yes. So basically, what we're always trying. This is a living lab. Every time we open something, we want to try something new. So. We have Los Angeles, 20 million people. We have Stockholm, 2 million people. Then we open Malmö, 300,000 inhabitants. Now we're actually looking into even smaller cities and see how far we can go. So now I'm at this construction site looking at a site. This is 150,000 people. And what we're doing is also, in this time, we're going to do an experiment going ventless. So we can actually go into retail spaces. And take advantage of the death of retail that is liberating a lot of prime real estate that might not be suitable for traditional restaurant with exhaust, etc. So that's kind of how we're playing. And actually what we're seeing is that the smaller the city, the more profitable. So it's a very interesting experiment.
Yeah, that's great.
Very interesting.
Well, this was really great, Benjamin. I appreciate your time. Thank you all for tuning in. We're going to carry over to our next talk. What we've sort of started touching on here is labor and the labor model and the labor market. And it's top conversation for most people in the business right now. Where can we find labor? Where'd all the cooks go? Nobody wants to work. So we're gonna dive in and talk about where all the cooks have gone, and what that means for the labor market, and probably circle back to some of these topics and how we build a restaurant around the available labor and make it a better place to work, and really focus on culture and sort of forget the hierarchy a little bit. So hopefully next month you can tune in and join us for that. And Benjamin, I'm going to be following up with you for sure to continue the conversation. It's so interesting to me, and so much room to grow in this area. So thank you for your time.
Well, we didn't take any cooks.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Well, they all found new careers.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.